Well, this is Kathy. I'm not her. My name's Tom Neely. We're partners together. And Bishop, it's been a pleasure to do this work. And before we get started on what micro-communities are, we want you to know a couple things. First, we're United Methodists who have served in local churches, districts, conference, this and others, national projects. So we've been involved in a lot of conversations over the years. The second is, while we're the presenters, we really represent the work of a much larger team of people, way too many to name, with varying perspectives, including those who work in our firm, which is called Encourageous, conference, district, local church leaders whose passion and experience, lay, clergy, have all guided this work. It's been a wonderful learning process. So this is a work of co-creation, and we have all enjoyed it. For the last 15 years, we've been pursuing a specific calling, helping church leaders use data measurement and visualization to see our shared reality and lead the culture change that we all know in our hearts must occur. The vision of our little company is to inspire courageous decisions for the good of others, for the glory of God. And that's what we've been working on. Through my previous experiences, I saw firsthand how helpful these tools can be in supporting change, and convicted church leaders deserve the same insights in service of the greater mission. Kathy's had a similar experience, and that shared vision is how the two of us found each other. Kathy?
So Bishop Sue brought us a significant challenge. She came looking for a fresh, data-informed, lay of the land analysis and potential paths forward. Oh, sorry, I'll scoot up. Thanks. In early 2025, she handed us several strategic questions, including this one. How do we reach the people in the Virginia Conference, not as an institution protecting itself, but as a faithful presence organized around people? This question ended up shaping the entire project and all that followed. She was clear with us she wasn't looking for more opinions. She thought she had plenty of those. But she asked us to find and analyze relevant data in order to provide new perspectives. So we mobilized an absolute ton of data, and we deployed several sophisticated data analysis tools to look at all aspects of this question. And today we're going to walk you through what we found. I'll scooch over a thing. There. Sorry. You good? When leaders are contemplating moving in a new direction, they have to think about these organizational pillars: vision, strategy, structure, and measurement. We're going to divide our project report into these 4 categories today, but I think the important thing to think about is, in a large and complicated organization like our annual conference, it's vitally important for the senior leaders to do what they can uniquely do on behalf of the entire conference, specifically set the vision, the strategy, the structure, and the measurement protocols. And it's only in a world where a strategic framework like this exists that our districts and our churches are freed up to connect locally, to move quickly, to prioritize effectively, and to innovate. So let's take a look at these. First, vision. The vision is simple. It's people connected. And man, have we heard a lot about that over the last couple days. What a blessing that's been. People connected to each other, congregation members connected to community members, and most importantly, all of us connected to our Savior, Jesus Christ. This is a simple representation of what we heard across the conference, but we have heard this in 100 different ways as we talk to people. We hear people say, we need to be Christ in our community. We need to be involved in community transformation. We need to get outside the walls of our church. We need to connect with the people of our community. Churches need to work together more, and we need to deploy some asset-based community development tools. And people connected is the theme that runs through all of that. So the vision, very simply put, people connected. The next question then becomes, how do we turn the bulk of our efforts toward reclaiming our identity as Methodists who are in connection with the people of our communities? And that question set up our next step, which Tom's going to walk us through.
So the obvious place to start was with the people of Virginia. We didn't start with where the churches are and what we've always done. We went the other way. So we just employed a very disciplined, iterative approach to ask what does data actually tell us about the people of Virginia. And there was sort of 4 ingredients in this mix. I don't know if it's as good as what was your?
It's a mix.
It's a mix. I forget what the bread is you made. Oh, sourdough, yeah. This is our sourdough ingredients. The first is, population analysis. We knew whatever came out of this had to be helpful to the local church. So when we looked at the population, we looked at it at a very, very small level, what we call the census block group level. A little data geek stuff here, hang tight. When I say block group, we mean the smallest group of people that we can get information about. So normally when we think about Virginia, we talk about counties and cities. And in Census World, that's called places, and there are 118 of those. However, there are 5,598 block groups. So the ability to get information about people, data about people, can be way more precise than just thinking about counties and cities. And that's a big deal because this desire to be contextually appropriate, the data can support that. Step 2, we did take a look at where the churches are and the population where the churches are. We actually looked at United Methodist institutions and campus ministries as well. For all those can be supporting the work of community transformation. Now here's some questions we didn't normally ask where this project took us, which was, how do the people of Virginia actually live and move? Their economic ties, commuting corridors, cultural identity that varies across Virginia, physical geography. When we say live and move, we're thinking like this. Where do you regularly shop? Where do you go for entertainment? Where do you dine out? Where do you hang out? That's where you live and move. That is probably where most of your relationships are taking place. And the fourth approach was to say, how would you mix all this together when you're making your sourdough? We used AI-assisted tools to analyze all of those approaches, kept putting them in the mix, kept asking different questions. We had a huge range of quantitative data, but more importantly, qualitative data that can come from any part of our Commonwealth. Governments know stuff. Universities know stuff. Nonprofits know stuff, and you can mix all that together now to get us an insight you couldn't otherwise get. And pulling it together gave us, to our delight, a genuinely new way of seeing the people of Virginia. But just a quick question, answer this in your own mind, if you wouldn't mind. In the Virginia Conference, how many people do you think actually live here? The answer, 8.6 million people. Did you know that? That's a lot of people that live in our conference. And good news, people want to live in the Virginia Conference because it's going to grow by almost 3% in the next 5 years to 8.9 million people. So the upside of this is that we do not serve, as a conference, a shrinking population. We get to serve with one of the most dynamic, diverse, and growing populations in America. So we should look at that and go, wow, that is a responsibility. that we've been given. So what's it look like when we look at these people by the block group? Now, I don't expect you to count those up. They're all there, trust me. And they're probably hard to see. But the idea that they're different sizes means these groups of 1,500 people sometimes live in a spread out area, sometimes in a very dense area. The color represents where the growth is going to occur over the next 5 years. The darker green is higher levels of growth, as much as 6%, and the lighter colors pretty much at 0. There's very, very few block groups that actually are going to be negative, which is really interesting. As you can see, there are themes in that, but there's no really uniformity. There's growth everywhere, and there's some not so much growth in places you think there might be. But the real question is, how many of these 8.6 million people can we actually engage with, connect with? That's a lot of people. Kathy, what do you think?
We really kept talking about these 8.6 million people by the ones. Like every single one of them matters to us as United Methodist in the Virginia Annual Conference. And so we kept asking ourselves, how many do we already know? Like, how do we get our arms around this? And to do that, we tried to figure out something about how many relationships people can have. And here's another really geeky moment, so just hang with us here, but some of you will find this very interesting. Robin Dunbar is an anthropologist and evolutionary psychologist whose work has transformed our understanding of human social capacity. He's best known for Dunbar's number. What's Dunbar's number? Well, through research, he found that humans have a natural capacity for meaningful connection, that there's a number of relationships we are evolutionarily adapted to navigate well, and that we can meaningfully know and relate to about 150 people. That's Dunbar's number. Now, we're not talking about close family. His research indicates on average that's about 5. Close friends, that's around 15. But these are people you know, you enjoy being around, you see on a fairly regular basis, and you could have a conversation with. So that set us up. Well, and let me talk about average very quickly. Some of you are sitting there right now thinking, I don't know 150 people. I don't want to know 150 people, maybe what you're thinking. Some of you are thinking, I know so many more people than that. And you're all right, because it's a great big average. So this is the thought experiment here. We already have connections, obviously. So we said, how many people are in our churches on an average Sunday? Now, that's not everybody who comes to our church. It's just a number about average number of people. Well, if we take that number, all of those people are in the community, they have relationships, and we times it by the 150, guess what? We already know 6.5 million people. That's pretty exciting stuff, right? When you think about the 8.6, it feels a little unapproachable at first, but we already have a foot in the door with these 6.5 million, and I think our message here is that, man, we are off to a powerful start of knowing these 8.6 million people. So this raises the question for every one of us, clergy and lay, and this is the question. Can we begin to see our congregations not as customers, but as a missional force for connecting with the 8.6 million people in our Virginia Annual Conference? And what would change if we started thinking that way? And that informed the question that came next. If every single one of the 8.6 million people are important and we're committed to really knowing and connecting with them, the next question is one of strategy. Strategy is how we would go about doing this. What's our method for pursuing our vision over time? And the notion over time is important. Visions aren't meant to be accomplished in the short term. They're something that you deeply believe in and are committed to, even when the near term seems daunting. It's also important to say that the strategy is not a program. It's not something that we're all going to go out and do the same 5 things tomorrow and hope it works, right? That's not what we're talking about here. It's thousands of ideas, initiatives, decisions that are all contextual and that move us in a common direction. So our next question is, what is a viable strategy for us? To launch us toward that strategy and toward that strategic thinking, we again look to the data to answer a simple question. How close are these people, 8.6 million, to where we, as United Methodist, our churches already are? Specifically, Bishop challenged us to answer the question, how many Virginians are within a 15-minute drive of one of our churches? In the retail world, this is known as a drive time study, and here's the answer. 99.7% of the people in our annual conference are within a 15-mile drive of a United Methodist church. It is stunning. It does kind of take your breath away for a minute. And we're going to talk about that presence a lot more in just a minute. Now, I do want to say it's human nature to start wondering about those 26,000. Bishop's been in a couple rooms where people brought that up, and theologically and practically, she answers it like this: we'll start where we are. So I'm taken, really, with how valuable this network of churches is. When you look at that map, can you imagine what a retailer would pay for that amount of local, community, known presence? It would be a lot. And so it's a valuable, valuable thing that we have here, and we call it our faithful presence. And it begs this question: could we see our embedded presence in all these communities as a gift from God to be honored and mobilized? So how would we go about mobilizing this incredible gift of this faithful presence that we have? In one of our interviews with Bishop Sue, she made it clear to us when she said these words: I appoint clergy to communities, not just churches. And this signifies that our clergy and our churches could be working together for the good of the communities they share. And we have some examples of this going on around the conference, and it's very exciting to see. But for the most part, if we were honest with ourselves, we would say our churches have operated as islands in the past. This gives us, though, a very exciting opportunity, because the latent power of our churches working together in their communities has never been fully activated. It's exciting, right? So the statement of strategy, or how we go about connecting with 8.6 million people, all who matter, is this: we can mobilize our faithful presence by fostering a culture of connection. Connection between United Methodist churches, connections with other denominations, connections with community organizations, all kinds of connections within our communities. Now, Tom's going to walk us through the next question, which is how could we organize ourselves, or what structure could we use to make it happen?
So we have the reach, we have strategy. The next question is structure, as Kathy mentioned. How does the structure empower the ability to do what we're talking about? And a quick word on structure, why it matters at all. In plain terms, structure is a tool for getting everyone in the system, in this case the Virginia Annual Conference, pointed in the same strategic direction. And a few reasons it matters: clarity and efficiency. Defining roles and responsibility helps in the whole communication. How many times have you heard, you know what our biggest problem is? Communication. A good structure helps with that. Decision making. It shapes how decisions are made, their speed, and their quality. Culture and motivation. It shapes the culture and how motivated and satisfied we all are in our work. And adaptability and innovation. Structure itself, it exists. You can't pretend it doesn't exist. Therefore, it either helps an organization adapt or it quietly holds it back. So which leads to the question our church has to ask honestly: have we even considered how to intentionally use structure to empower our mission, or we just structure it like we always have because it's what we already know or we feel we have to. If we're willing to look, if we're willing to look at our structure, the next logical question is, where should the structure come from? And the answer is from the people of Virginia. Different than maybe we would answer it other times. So how do these 8.6 million people live and move? Through all our work, we started asking, what are the natural clusters where people share these things in common? Social, economic, cultural, and infrastructural connections. How they shop, how they commute, how they worship, how they raise their children. And rather than draw lines in a map based on our needs or our understanding of Virginia, let's start with the people, how they live, and let that map draw Virginia for us. So we did ask that question over and over, hundreds of different ways over a period of months, and we finally started getting consistent answers, which gave us the confidence that we were onto something real. We've discovered some natural patterns that emerged. And what we realized is people live and move in natural micro-communities. That's just the name we're using for them, because it takes the 8.6 million and begins to break it down into some manageable chunks. And there's 46 of them across the Virginia Conference. And again, the definition is natural clusters of people who share social, economic, cultural, infrastructural connections. And here's what you really want to know, where are they? Well, here they are, all 46 of them. This is the Virginia as people actually experience it, not as any organization's lines. And as people's lived reality. They're sized by how people naturally cluster, so they range from about $21,000 and 21,000 people in the Blue Ridge borderlands of Floyd County, all the way to dense urban cores, rural expanses, bustling city centers. They're the same. They're each one micro-community. There's not a good one or a bad one. They're just different ones. Because what defines them is their shared connection, shared experience. There's no way trying to make them equal. They are what they are. And yet across many of them, some threads appear and again. Every one of them wrestles with the tension between growth and what's being left behind. Youth moving away, aging populations, broadband, healthcare gaps in rural places, housing affordability and congestion in growing ones. But each of these own 46, can we move that back one, please, Brian? So we just see the map. Because what we did is we then plotted our congregations. Is that what we're seeing? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Plotted our congregations on top of the micro-communities. So we have churches in 44 of 46 of the micro-communities. The two we're not officially in, we have them surrounded because they're very small. But we're there. They're surrounded, yes. And I want us to feel some hope and anticipation here. Because look at the faithful presence God has built. A presence that has survived a great deal, which you've already talked about. Here we are still in 2026 with all this assets worth in place. So the question worth embracing with some discernment, why did God put the people of this congregation with their particular gifts, resources, hearts, and minds in this place at this moment, in this time? Do we believe we are here for a reason such a time as this? So once you see the churches working in the micro-communities, the next question is, what if our churches work together as a dynamic network of people? As Kathy said, the latent power of our churches has never been fully activated, The activation is where we become part of a network, not only of working together as United Methodists, but within other community organizations as well. We aren't the only people in town who care about what we care about and are called to do what we do, even though we bring our unique perspective. And let's clear what we mean about this, what we do not mean, this idea of a dynamic network working together. This is not where the big boss church tells the other ones what to do. Every one of these churches has something unique to bring to the others, something to receive from the others, something to bring to the whole community, and something to receive from the whole community. Each has a unique call, each has unique gifts. It's the body of Christ as it was designed. That's the power within the culture of connection. So for every micro-community in our work, there's a profile. You'll have all these in the future. Bishop Hsu is going to talk more about that. But I want to read one of them because they each have their own personality to give a sense of what you can see. This morning, Dr. Lewis mentioned, do we have the prophetic imagination? Can we see the people? This is a tool to help us see them. So one's called Southside Valley Fringe. Maybe some of you all live there. From mill towns to mountain hollows. It's kind of like this little catchphrase. From mill towns to mountain hollows, heritage, resilience, and the community finding its next chapter. It's kind of like the story of this micro-community. There's some data involved with it. Can we click over? There's 125,005 people live there in 2025. 22 United Methodist churches are already there who average 700 in worship. So if you do the little thought experiment, guess what? 150 times 700 is about 105,000. Again, we're well on the way in that micro community to having the meaningful connections. We're off to a great start. There's also 21 clergy and lay supply, and that's important because if we're going to work together in a dynamic network, it needs to be led well. And that, since we already have leaders in place, that gives us the opportunity to engage them in ways to help us make this happen. Each of these also have some other things. I'm going to read them because they're probably hard to read, but general character of the area. This is the Southside Valley Fringe. Rolling Piedmont terrain, rising toward the Blue Ridge foothills, anchored historically by textile and furniture manufacturing. Towns like Bassett, Ridgway, and Stewart, surrounded by forested hills and winding creeks, communities proud of their heritage and with close ties. How the people live. Life is slower paced, rooted in family and community. Many households balance multiple jobs or gig work. Churches, high school sports, and volunteer fire departments are central to civic life. The strong DIY ethic and reliance on informal networks. The challenges and what the future holds for Southside Valley Fringe. Economic displacement from manufacturing loss, youth out-migration, healthcare shortages, transportation barriers, and new paths forward include workforce trade investments, ecotourism along the Blue Ridge Parkway, mill property reactivation, creative rural placemaking. Patrick and Henry Community College is already expanding credentialing in trades and tech. So the point of a profile like this is to help us understand how people actually experience life here. Then we can ask, what is our role? Where can we connect? And even better, where can we join others in doing what they're already doing to create a better future? So we close the structure part of our project with an observation and a question. Could the building block of our structure be these micro-communities? It makes sense in an organization that wants a culture of connection that knows people already live and move in these natural ways, built on the people themselves. We already have the relationships where we can be the salt and light and yeast within them. We believe this might be a fresh, data-informed structure that empowers the mission and vision. And if that is so, Kath, that leaves us with one final question. If we try this, how will we know if it's the way to go.
All right, I know everybody's tired. I'm going to go off script here a little bit. Those are the really big ideas, right? That we can know how people live and move in Virginia. We can know what churches are in those micro communities. If we can mobilize our churches to begin to work together for the good of their community, things could be very different. Bishop talked about that, Doug talked about that in the laity session, and both of our incredible speakers today talked about that as a reclaiming of who we are as United Methodist. And so those are the big ideas. And data doesn't have an opinion. It just is what it is. But it can be helpful as we try to get to know the people of the micro communities. Just very quickly, I'm going to go through measurement. The big point here, honestly, is if we keep measuring what we've always measured, we're going to keep getting what we always got. And if we go through all the effort of vision, structure, strategy, and we don't change what we measure, we might as well not do it. So the question about measurement is, how do we focus on the most important things by measuring what really matters? And we have to move from asking the question, how do we measure mainly our institutional health, to how do we measure churches and communities flourishing together? And that measurement system would allow local churches to measure what's most important in their particular communities. It won't be one big measurement system coming from the top. Here are some culture change that would follow what all we've been talking about today. First of all, we would move from pastors being assigned to congregations, Bishop already thinks about it this way, to pastors participating in community mission together. We can move from measurement driving activity, which we all know it can, to mission driving measurement. We could move from district lines defining relationships to community relationships shaping the districts themselves. And we could move from being a hierarchy of churches. And what do I mean by that? All of our churches, we have labels for all of them, right? Good church, bad church, big church, small church, contemporary church, traditional church. And we would move toward this network of unique communities where all churches have the opportunity to thrive, and thrive can mean something different for each church. That's what contextual means. So how would we start to measure? Well, first, we would need to know our community. Every micro community has a profile. We need to know the people we are called to serve. We need to know our congregation, understand who's already in our pews, their networks, where their lives overlap with the community around them. Set goals, experiment, monitor movement. We need to discern our calls in our communities, try things, learn, try again, and let the data augment that discernment. All of that is a measurement philosophy that says there are no failures, there's only learning. And we can sometimes get anxious about robust measurement systems, and that's because they're frequently used for judgment, and judgment kills innovation. But in a culture of innovation, we count every experience as a learning opportunity to keep moving forward. So that's the measurement philosophy. And that brings us right back around to that question Bishop asked us. What a great question, right? How do we reach the people of the Virginia Conference, not as an institution protecting itself, but as a faithful presence organized around people? And here's the project report in a nutshell. Vision, people connected. Strategy, mobilize our faithful presence by fostering a culture of real connection. Structure, build it on micro-communities. Measurement, no failures, only learning. We've done a lot of talking about data today. I just want to say, data doesn't make decisions. It augments discernment. It's a voice at the table. It doesn't have an agenda. And the catch is, data has to be invited because it doesn't speak up on its own. Bishop, we thank you for inviting us to give data a voice as you all seek to faithfully move in a new, powerful direction to know 8.6 million Virginians and offer every single one of them Jesus Christ.
Thank you.